So Oki, and welcome to the University of Lethbridge. Our university's Blackfoot name is Aniskum, meaning sacred buffalo stone. The university is located in traditional Blackfoot Confederacy territory, and we honor the Blackfoot people and their traditional ways of knowing and caring for this land, as well as all Aboriginal peoples who have helped shape and continue to strengthen our university community. So a few housekeeping items before we begin. We'll hold all questions until the question and answer period at the end. So if you have a question, it can just go in the Q&A section and your question will be read aloud by one of us. Similar questions will be combined. So we do find that there's often themes of questions. And so please know that we may not ask your question exactly as you wrote it. And if the question is very specific to your situation, Courtney will attempt to provide you a written response in the Q&A, or you can send us a note in our contact form, which will be posted at the end of the presentation. And Courtney, if you can maybe dig that out actually and post that, that would be great in the chat. Okay, I'm going to start sharing here. Okay, and Courtney or Hannah, can you just confirm that that's sharing properly? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so let's get things rolling. So in this information session today, we're going to provide an overview of the graduate counseling programs we offer within the Faculty of Education. We'll discuss the features of our programs to help you decide if they meet your needs. We'll review the admission requirements in order that you can determine if you're ready to start your application. We'll examine the components that you need to include within your application. We'll look at potential career paths upon completion of our counseling programs, and we'll wrap things up with a question and answer period. And again, please note that we'll hold all questions until the end. So please do give us a chance to actually, answer things within the session before you start asking your questions, because that'll help us out immensely. So we often receive questions as to why counseling psychology graduate programs are housed within a Faculty of Education. And the answer is that the field of counseling psychology grew out of vocational counseling and career counseling, and it's actually found in faculties of education throughout much of Canada. And within the Faculty of Education at the University of Lethbridge, we offer two distinct graduate counseling programs. So the first is a Master of Education with a major in counseling psychology, and the second is the Master of Counseling program. So let's take a look at some of the features of our programs to help you decide if they're suitable for you. So first, a huge strength of our programs is our cohort model. So students are admitted to a cohort and proceed according to the schedule with their peers. You're completing courses together at the same time. And students in each cohort become a support network for each other, and this network lasts far beyond the timelines of the program. It's really great to see those connections made within the program. Secondly, our programs are course-based, so the coursework is aligned with the needs of the field and all work towards competencies required by professional bodies. And courses are taught by qualified faculty and instructors with expertise in the area. A third feature that both programs share is that they offer a flexible location for practicum. So students arrange their practicum, providing you with a say in your training. The practicum can be completed across Canada and pending approval of the supervisor and agency, of course. There is criteria related to that outlined within our Counselling Psychology Practicum Handbook. So if you do look online, you can find that. Students are well oriented before commencing a search for placement. In fact, just last night, Courtney had a pre-practicum session with students who are looking for next fall. So we start you off well in advance to provide you with support for your search. And students do receive a list of approved sites and supervisors to assist in your search, so you are supported throughout the process. It is worth noting that placements may require a vulnerable sector check or similar additional requirements, a criminal record check, for instance, beyond what's needed for practicum. And it's also worth noting that the practicum courses include both the placement at the agency and a seminar component. So the seminar component typically involves 4 days of virtual meetings with your instructors and peers for each of the practicum courses. And a fourth feature is that both the MEd Counseling Psychology and the Master of Counseling programs align with certification. So specifically, Both programs meet graduate requirements for Canadian Certified Counselor with the Canadian Counselling and Psychotherapy Association, so that's the CCPA, and as well Alberta Registered Psychologist with College of Alberta Psychologists, or CAP. So those are the features of both programs, and now we'll just look at some things to see if you can determine which is best for your needs. So first, let's talk about the MEd Counseling Psychology program. So the main distinguishing feature of this program is that the first year is offered on campus. The program is 2 years in duration, and so that time frame results in a very intense program, and it's designed for students who are fully immersed in their studies, so not for people who are working. The program consists of 3 components, so coursework, practicum placements, and a culminating activity. So as you can see from the schedule that's in front of you, the first year of program is quite intensive with 9 courses completed. Courses are in person on campus and are normally offered during the day, so it's not feasible to remain working due to the course load in this program. However, as the practicum location is flexible, the second year affords you the opportunity to complete your practicum in a location of your choosing. So you don't have to be in Lethbridge for the second year, just for the first year. The culminating activity, so the program includes 3 options. So you have a thesis, project, or capstone. And most students do opt for the capstone as it is the fastest pathway to program completion. However, if you intend to pursue a PhD, a thesis is recommended. And it's good to know that completing a project or thesis typically extends your program, and it does add to the cost as well. One thing that sets us apart from many U of L graduate programs is that due to the course-based nature of our program, we do not require applicants to identify a potential supervisor for thesis or project at the time of the application. So you don't need to worry about that when you're applying. You would, if you're going to do a thesis or a project, you would create your committee once you were in program and had an idea for your topic. So no worries about trying to locate a supervisor at the start of your application. And an orientation to all of the culminating activity options is held upon starting your program. And this orientation will shed a lot of light on each of the options. So if you decide that you'd like to pursue the project or thesis option, you'd wait until your research course is completed before reaching out to faculty members to potentially act as your supervisor. So we do recommend that you really get a feel for the research course before you decide whether or not that's something you want to take on. So those are the main elements of the Master of Education Counseling Psychology program. Next, we'll take a look at the Master of Counseling, which is designed for working professionals. So it's intended to help you navigate the challenges of balancing both a master's program and your career at the same time. So the blend of online coursework and face-to-face components makes that feasible. And as you can see, the courses are spread out to allow you to continue working, and the program is completed in 3 years. So it does include 3 components: the coursework, a practicum placement, and a culminating activity. And relative to the coursework, your summer term consists of online work starting in May and wrapping up with an intensive summer institute on campus in Lethbridge for 2 weeks in July. So it's both online and on campus in that first term. Accommodation options are available on campus for students attending Summer Institute, so we will provide information to admitted students on that. If you look at the schedule, you'll see in the fall term, so September to December, and the winter term, and I see I have a typo here, so I haven't changed this. It's supposed to say winter, so we've recently changed our spring term to winter term, so my apologies for that. So January to April. So in those terms, courses are completed online in an asynchronous manner. However, you do proceed through the courses together with the peers in your cohort. So it really is engaging with others throughout the program. So online components could include discussion forum participation, group work, individual assignments, self-study, video review, as just a few instances of what instructors may assign for you. And you're expected to be consistently engaging with your peers and instructor throughout each week of the course. And I would suggest that typically students are active every single day within the course. So it's really important that even though you're working and it's an asynchronous platform, that you're contributing and engaging thoughtfully throughout the week. So it's not just a weekends only kind of situation for study. So as mentioned in the program features, the practicum location is flexible and can be completed at a distance. It's really important to note for those who are working. So if you intend to be working while you're taking the program, students should commit to approximately 2.5 to 3 days a week minimum dedicated to your practicum placement in that third year of program. So we recommend that MC students take a leave of absence from work or reduce their work hours significantly during this time. So that's really important to know that while it is designed for working professionals, in that last 8 months of program, you will need to scale back your work in order to allow for a practicum. And wrapping up your program is the culminating activity. And in the Master of Counseling, you'll complete a professional portfolio. And that involves a collection of reflective tasks and a comprehensive professional development plan. And as this program does not have a thesis option, it is not a recommended route if you intend to go on to do a PhD in counseling psychology. Okay, so that's really important to know. So just looking at these side by side, just a reminder, the MEd Counseling Psychology is on campus. It's 2 years. It's not for individuals who are working. It's an on-campus student. You have options for your culminating activity. Something I didn't note is that the cost, so based on 2024-25 rates, is about $16,000. And this cohort starts in July. The application is now open, and it is open until December 1st. Relative to the Master of Counseling, again, it's for working professionals. It's blended delivery offered over 3 years. Does not offer a thesis route, so it only has a professional portfolio, and it's about $24,000. The cohorts start in May, and again, the application is open now until December 1st. I should mention that these are domestic rates, so if you're an international student, please do check the fee schedule for the international rates. Okay, so that's some information about the programs. Next, let's take a look at the admission requirements so that you can determine whether or not it's feasible for you to apply now. It is worth noting that the counseling programs are very competitive. So we do recommend that you only submit your application once you're confident you have at least the minimum requirements. We receive over 400 applications for 40 to 50 seats. So if you don't meet the minimum requirements, it really is just throwing your money away, because we just can't admit individuals that don't meet the minimum requirements when we receive 400 applications from qualified students. Okay, so first off, in terms of admission requirements, you'll need to have completed a baccalaureate or a 4-year undergraduate degree. Successful applicants have come from a variety of backgrounds. So a BA or BSc Psych, Bachelor of Addictions Counseling rather, a BSW, B Nursing, B Management, B-Ed. And while it is acceptable to have a B-Ed, sometimes people get confused and think that the M-Ed requires a B-Ed for entry, and that's not the case. It's an acceptable pathway, but it's not a requirement for the M-Ed. Also, a minimum grade point average of 3.0 on a 4.0 scale is required. And this is calculated on the terms containing the last 20 courses, which have a grade other than pass-fail. So if you want to determine your GPA, simply start with your most recent term and count your courses back until you reach the term containing the 20th course, and be sure to include all courses completed within that term. So you may end up with greater than 20 courses being utilized in your GPA. So we don't cherry pick that last term. All the courses completed in that term that contains the 20th course will be included. The next bit's quite important, so please do pay attention to this, and we'll probably go over it within the questions as well. But we do require 2 years of relevant experience, and the best kind of experience is that where you're helping to facilitate change in others, or where you're trying to help people with their emotions so that you can determine if you're comfortable dealing with those human emotions. And it can be work or volunteer experience. So some examples of suitable experience include hotline or crisis line work, any actual helping or counseling experience, working at addiction centers, volunteering with a sexual assault center, or peer support work, or it could include group home, one-on-one respite care, youth care, teaching, coaching. Those are examples of things that are suitable experience for you. Part-time experience or work does count, and it's simply prorated. So for instance, if you worked half-time for 4 years, you would have the equivalent of 2 years full-time experience. So just simply take it as a prorated and figure out your total there. We don't calculate down to hours, so please, we don't get that granular, so don't be asking what number of hours we need total or anything like that. As well, we need a breadth of undergraduate courses in psychology. So in our admission section, we do recommend specific courses, and that includes human development, learning, personality, psychological disorders, and counseling skills. And we are looking for a breadth of undergraduate psychology courses, which will assist you going into your master's program. And then lastly, if ELP or English language proficiency is required, then you'd need to provide proof of that. So this is very interesting information for everyone, and it gives you some background in terms of whether or not you would potentially be considered a successful applicant. So can help you figure out what kinds of steps do you need to take to become a successful applicant. So statistics for recent admissions show that last year, the MEd Counselling Psychology program, the average GPA for admission was a 3.88, and the average work experience was 3 years, work or volunteer experience. The average number of undergraduate psychology courses completed was 20. Okay, and in the Master of Counseling program, the average GPA was a 3.79, and the average work/volunteer experience was over 7 years. And the average number of undergraduate psychology courses completed was 16. So you can see if you're trying to come in with 2 or 3 psych courses, you're probably not going to be successful. We're really, you're going to be competing against individuals with upwards of 20 psychology courses, and you're just not going to have the background that you need to come into a graduate level counseling psychology program. So we do recommend having a good number of psychology courses before you submit your application. So once you've determined that you've met or exceeded the admission requirements, you can start to pull together the components required for your application. So let's take a look at what you need. So please note that the application is completed entirely online. And once you have the following elements ready to upload or include within your application, the process actually only takes a few minutes and is quite straightforward. So transcripts are required for every post-secondary institution you have attended, even if it was just for one course. So, and that even if it shows as transfer credit on, so for instance, if you attended Mount Royal University and you switched to the University of Lethbridge and those Mount Royal courses are showing as transfer credit on your U of L transcript, we still need that Mount Royal transcript, okay? So every institution you attended, we require just unofficial transcripts at time of application. But we do for every post-secondary institution that you've taken courses at. Okay. Additionally, 3 referees are required. So you'll simply enter the name and email address of the individuals who have agreed to act as a referee for you. So be sure to ask them in advance. You do not request a letter from them, so that's worth noting. So you're not going to actually ask them for a letter. Instead, when you enter their information in the application, they'll be sent an email and they'll enter their evaluation directly within our online system. Be sure to click the Submit Recommendation Request. So there's a little button after you enter their name and email address, and you click Submit Recommendation Request button, and that shoots them the email asking them to complete. So just be sure that you click that button. You can track the status of your reference. So at any time you can go into the CollegeNet application system and see the status, and you can send a reminder to your referees from within the system as well. And do remember that referees need to submit by December 1st deadline. So provide them with plenty of notice. And we've heard from faculty members that they receive upwards of 50 requests for references. So you do need to give them, numerous weeks to get that information submitted on your behalf. As noted relative to your work or volunteer experience, it's also important to ensure that your experience affords you the ability to provide references who are well situated to comment on your potential success in the field. So think of that when you're trying to find volunteer or work experience. So it's desirable to have supervisors who are in the field of counseling psychology so they can speak to your likely success in this particular field within the reference letter. So that really helps the admissions committee know if your potential for success in the field is likely or not. You'll also need to upload a letter of intent, and this should clearly outline your interest in the program and your intended career outcomes. So do you intend to be a registered psychologist? Do you intend to go the CCPA route? Those are things that are important for the admissions committee to know. 1 to 2 pages is sufficient, and there's no specific formatting or word count required. So remember, the admissions committee is looking at 400 of these, so being succinct is in your benefit. So clear and concise. They're not going to read something that's 4 or 5 pages, most likely. They're going to skim it. So 1 to 2 pages is great, and keep your ideas concise. You will include as well a CV as part of your application or curriculum vitae, and that's just essentially, if you're not aware, it's just a resume that lists publications. So if you happen to publish something at the undergrad level, then you would include that. And if required, your ELP test scores would be included as well. So if you have all of those things in place, then you're ready to submit your application. It's worth noting that you can commence your application and go back to finish it at a later time. Applications may be submitted up to and including December 1st. And a reminder that references are also due. So all supporting documentation, everything is required by December 1st. There isn't a separate document deadline. So submitting your application earlier is better to make sure that you can get everything in place and allows us to follow up in case there are any questions. So we do recommend that you don't wait until the last minute to submit. Do submit in November, early December, so that we can review your application and reach out should we have any questions. Okay, so we've talked about the 2 programs that we offer within the Faculty of Education. So just a reminder, the MEd Counseling Psychology, that's an on-campus program, and the Master of Counseling program, which was designed for working professionals. And we mentioned that either lead to your chosen career route, so the Canadian Certified Counselor with CCPA, or registered psychologist in Alberta with the College of Alberta Psychologists. So the first career path we'll talk about is Canadian Certified Counselor or Professional Counselor. And this is through the CCPA, which is a national body certifying counselors. And it's considered the minimum standard for the profession. So CCPA only reviews your graduate coursework, and our programs fulfill the requirements for CCPA certification. So once you complete either of the programs, you are immediately eligible to go and apply for your CCPA certification. Now, it's also within the field, there's been some changes to the landscape. So there are also counselor certifying bodies in many provinces, which align with the CCPA. So for instance, there's the BC Association of Clinical Counselors, or BCACC, and applicants should be aware of the specific requirements of the body you intend to certify with, as they can differ from province to province, and the onus is on students to check the requirements for the province in which they intend to practice. So as an example, we have many students from BC who come through our programs, but what happens is if they're going to go the BCACC route, they need to take a group and family systems therapy course, and typically they just take that at Yorkville or someplace like that, and they get that requirement met, and then they're eligible to go on and apply with BCACC. But the onus is on students for sure to make sure that you take a look at the requirements for each province, because they are a little bit different. Okay, so the second career path that we'll talk about is Alberta Registered Psychologist. And again, it's worth noting that in Alberta, there's different requirements than other provinces. So again, if you intend to practice in another province, it's worth checking the requirements there. So for instance, with most other provinces, you require a PhD to become registered psychologist, but that's not the case in Alberta. So CAP looks at your graduate coursework, but there are also additional requirements. So the graduate coursework completed in the program meets the graduate requirements for CAP. It is worth noting that CAP has been in discussions with all the universities, and they are looking at modifying assessment and diagnoses requirements. And so we are working on that. So we're aware of these changes that are coming to the field, and anybody being admitted now would be grandfathered for the current regulations. But it is worth noting that the field is always evolving, and we're always in consultation with the regulating bodies so that we make sure that our programs are meeting the requirements. So the additional requirements for registered psychologists include 12 undergraduate courses in psychology. And again, remember, this is for CAP. So this is to become a registered psychologist. This is not the same as our admission requirements. So this is only pertaining to if you intend to register as a psychologist in Alberta. So for those courses, it's really important for you to know that the title must include psychology. The instructor must have a graduate degree in psychology, and the course must be intended to prepare students to engage in the practice of psychology. So if you're in a program right now, if you're in your second year program and you're just watching this session to sort of learn what to do in the future, be very careful when you're taking courses that the instructor who's teaching the course has a graduate degree in psychology and not something like neuroscience. Because even if the course is titled psychology, if the instructor does not have a graduate degree in psychology, that course cannot be counted towards CAP. So that's really important to be careful when you're registering in courses. And the third thing is that it must also be intended to train people for the practice of psychology. So that means that something like a child and youth counselor, as an example, is not intended to train you as a psychologist. So those courses would not normally count relative to meeting CAP criteria for evaluating academic credentials. So addictions counseling is another one that can be kind of hard to judge whether or not CAP will accept those courses. So having psychology in the title is really important. And will save you some effort in having things reviewed. So additionally, some courses covering specific substantive content areas are also required for CAP. So CAP requires 4, but 1 is actually met within our program. But the 4 include biological basis of behavior, social basis of behavior, psychology of the individual, and cognitive affective basis of behavior. And that last one is actually covered within our program. So you don't need to get that at the undergraduate level. If you have the required undergraduate courses and have completed your graduate program with us, then you're ready to apply for provisional status. So following completion of your master's program, so this is, you have all the undergrad courses, you do your graduate program, and there's still additional things that are required. So following completion of your master's program, you would also require additional hours of supervised training as a provisional psychologist. So right now that's 1,600 hours. And note that your practicum in program does not count towards that. So again, this is after you graduated from your program, you would find somebody to supervise your provisional hours, and that can't happen until you finish your degree. So additionally, beyond the supervised hours, you'll complete an ethics exam. They're actually bringing in 2 separate exams. I'm not sure when that's going to happen, but there'll be 2 exams and an oral exam. And in Alberta, only once all of those elements have been approved by CAP are you considered a registered psychologist. So in other provinces, as I mentioned, a PhD level degree is required to meet registered psychologist requirements. So something worth noting is that both of our MEd Counselling Psychology and our Master of Counselling programs are approved program pathways. So that's the official language used by CAP. So meaning that you may have a seamless entry into provisional psychologist status. So after being admitted, we would review your situation and determine if you've met all of the undergraduate requirements for the approved programs pathway. So do you have all of those courses that we just mentioned? Additionally, within your program, you would need to have your practicum supervisor as a registered psychologist in order to meet our MOU with CAP. And if that was the case, then you would be fast-tracked for provisional status. So If you've not met these additional requirements, it's not a problem. You would simply complete the necessary elements that are lacking before we're able to recommend you. So you do have the opportunity to fill those gaps and then come back to us and say, I've now met, I've cleared this deficiency, and now I'd like to go the provisional psychologist route. And you still do apply to CAP for that, but we do the initial evaluation of your academic credentials. Okay, you may opt to stick with a pathway of Canadian Certified Counselor with a CCPA and never pursue our psych. Again, CCPA is the minimum requirement for counselors in the field. The choice is yours. However, the majority of our graduates in Alberta go on to registered psychologists, and we do recommend that if you intend to take this pathway, that you do it as quickly as possible upon completing graduation. So, make sure that you plan for that so that you have that time scheduled to do those 1,600 hours of supervised training and to write your EPPPs and your oral exam. And we find that students that do it as soon as they can after are more successful with their EPPPs. It just really gives you the best opportunity to pass your exams when you're coming directly from the graduate program. So you're not starting from scratch with your ethics, because it's quite intensive. Okay, so just a reminder about the program comparison. So seeing those side by side to make sure everybody's clear on which program is which. And then just giving you some information about contacts and resources. So for inquiries, we do have a contact request form that you can fill out. And please make sure that you check the checkbox so that we can actually respond to you. And some of the things that I've mentioned today, so the College of Alberta Psychologists and the CCPA, some links are provided here, and as well a link to the application, to our web pages as well. So I'll leave that up for you in case you need that. And we'll just give a quick pause here while we get organized to get the Q&A going. And just a reminder, to ask a question, please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Okay, so one question here is, how do I calculate my experience if it's part-time? So part-time experience counts and is simply prorated. So for instance, if you worked half-time for 4 years, you'd have the equivalent of 2 years full-time. So it's just be a prorated situation for you. Okay, and another question here. I intend to practice as a counselor in British Columbia. Do your counseling programs meet the needs of that jurisdiction? So yes, that would be with the BCACC. And we do have many of our students that go on to practice as an RCC, or registered certified counselor, in BC. And you would just need to complete the group therapy course, which is offered in our Master of Counseling program, and a family systems therapy course, which our students have had success taking at other institutions. And actually, I believe last year BCACC indicated they're also looking at adding an Indigenous cultural safety training course, but it's not yet a requirement, but it is on the, it has been noted that will become a requirement in the future. Okay, what are the required courses for admission? So remember, there's a difference between the CAP courses that are required for registered psychologists and the courses that we need for admission. So for us, for admission, we're looking for a breadth of courses in counseling psychology or educational psychology. Particular emphasis is paid to courses in human development, in learning, personality, psychological disorders, and counseling and/or interpersonal skills. And there are no specific prereq courses. Students should just simply present a breadth of courses across these topics. And again, think back to our successful applicants. So in the MC, they had a minimum of 16 psych courses, and or an average rather of 16. And in the MEd Counseling Psych, they had an average of 20 courses in psychology. So it is important to come in with a strong number of psychology courses. Can I apply to both programs? So the U of L does only allow individuals to apply once per term. So you do have to think carefully about which of the programs is best suited for you. So you'll only be evaluated by one admissions committee. So you really need to think about what's best suited to your needs before you make that determination to apply. And so what kind of funding is available for students? So we do have two main components to funding for our students. The first component is scholarships, and they mostly come as entrance awards. And this year across our Faculty of Education graduate program, so that's a couple of programs, includes our MEd in educational leadership and contemporary issues in education. But we distributed $180,000. So it's a pretty good chunk for the couple of hundred students that we've got, and it's based pretty much entirely either on your ethnic status or your entrance GPA. And students can also apply for a graduate assistantship in which they provide a faculty member with assistance in their research for several hours per week. So the remuneration is actually quite good for this. So it's $3,700 per term for 8 hours of work per week. There's also a half-time situation for that, so only 4 hours a week, and you can be paid half the $3,700 per term for that. So it's quite lucrative, and you also get experience working with researchers. Okay, good question here. So I'm an international student and I'm interested in applying to the Master of Counseling program. Will I get a study permit for the full 3 years? So it's really important to note that for blended delivery programs, study permits are only granted for the on-campus duration. So in the case of the Master of Counseling program, the visa would only grant you permission to attend the summer components in Canada, and the rest of your program would have to be completed in your home country. Recommend seeking input from the International Center for sure. And the other thing that's worth noting is blended programs are not typically eligible for postgraduate work permits. So that makes it not as lucrative for international students who are wanting to seek applications. So the MEd Counselling Psychology would probably be a better fit for the international students because you could apply for a study permit. Okay, so what kind of experience counts? So as I mentioned, experience can be work or volunteer, and it can be full-time or part-time. The admissions committee is looking for experience where you're trying to help people with their emotions. You really want to find out if you're uncomfortable dealing with those human emotions. And we gave this example previously. So hotline or crisis line work, actual helping or counseling experience, addiction centers, volunteer with the sexual assault center, peer support, group home, one-on-one respite care, youth care, teaching and coaching are some examples. And if you don't think that you have enough experience, I would say that many distress lines provide some really, really good training, and they'll really help you figure out whether or not it's the right fit for you. It really becomes a fight or flight instinct when you're faced with some of those challenges that you encounter on the crisis lines. And so with their training and that experience, it's a really good opportunity to test out to see if it's something that's really up your alley. Okay, so there's a question here about accommodations. So on campus for the face-to-face sections of the Master of Counseling program. So yes, we do have conference services that has housing available for a fee. We work with conference services to have rooms set aside for our students, and there are a variety of options. So one and multiple bedroom options for sharing. But students are not required to stay on campus. So you can select housing which meets, your needs for on-campus housing. So whether or not that's an Airbnb or staying elsewhere, the college or things like that, that's certainly an option for you as well. But we will give you some information about that if you're admitted to a program. Okay, so question here about I'm currently completing my BA Psych and will be done in April. Can I apply now? So absolutely. So if you're currently in program and you're going to be done in April, if you've met the other admission requirements, such as the 2 years of experience, then you can apply. But please note that we can't sort of check off the number of psych courses that you've completed until they're actually graded. So even your courses that are they're in progress for the fall term would not be considered because we don't have a grade for those yet. If you're offered admission, it would be subject to successful completion of your degree in April. So yeah, there would be some conditional offers. Um,